Have you noticed in St. Mark's Gospel that Jesus is constantly telling people to stop announcing who he is? Now it seems obvious that Jesus doesn't want the demons proclaiming who he is, like today. We know who you are, shh, quiet. But all through Mark's Gospel, whenever he performs a healing, he'll say, and tell nobody about it. Theologians call it the Markan secret. It's Mark's secret, right? But what St. Mark is trying to do is to help us come into a better understanding of who Jesus really is. And all of these times when Jesus is being proclaimed as something, it's in the context of a miracle, right? Or an exorcism. There will be one moment in Mark's Gospel where Jesus will not shush, shh. And that is when he is hanging on the cross. As he hangs on the cross, the centurion will declare, truly, this is the Son of God. And there will be no shushing from Jesus. Because what Mark wants us to know, that his identity, first and foremost, is as our Messiah. Jesus is the one who comes to redeem us from sin. He is the Christos, the anointed one, who bears upon himself the sins of all of us. That's who he is. And that becomes now for us the identifying mark of all Christians. And so for Mark, the cross looms as a shadow over Jesus' life. And for us as a Christian, the cross then looms over our lives too. But it's not to be a cross of oppression, but it's the cross of redemption. In Mark's Gospel, Jesus will say, if you wish to be my disciple, you must take up your cross every day and follow me. That Jesus wants us to unite ourselves to him, and he can bring us redemption. But our identity now is in Jesus. And that's what I want to speak to you about, particularly young people. Students here, I want to get your ear, but everybody, listen up. Jesus was always clear on who he was. What was his purpose in life? Who he was and what he was about. Who he was and what he was about. And so I ask you, do you know who you are and what you're about in life? Do you know who you are and what you are about in life? What is your identity? What is your vision for life? Do you have one? We all need one. Because if we don't think it through, then we subject ourselves to really the whims of the culture around us. If I never ever think about being an engineer, I will not become one. If I never think about being an architect, I will never become one. What are you about? What's the vision for your life? Do you have one? Everything in nature has something it's been created for. Aristotle, in his philosophy, in his physics, he uses a Greek word called telos. T-E-L-O-S. Everything in nature has a telos. It's what it was, something was destined to be. So Aristotle will hold up an acorn and say, this acorn is destined to be what? An oak tree. Is that oak tree inside this acorn? Yes. It's there. But it's there, although it doesn't look like it. But this acorn will become an oak tree. That's what it's destined to be. This acorn will never ever become a fish. It won't. It won't become an apple tree. It won't. That's not what it was created to be. And so Aristotle asked the question, as a human being, do we have a telos? Do we have that for which we were created for? What do you think, people? Or do we as humans stand outside the natural order? Everything else is created for a purpose except I'm in charge of my own destiny. In a certain sense, we are in charge of our own destiny because we have free will. But on the other hand, St. Augustine would say, we were created to love God. That's the purpose of being a human being, is to love the Lord. Now you might not be that point in your life where you say, that's what I'm about, loving the Lord. If you are, praise God. But even within that, people, do you know who you are and what you're about in life? Because if you don't know who you are and what you're about, see, Jesus, he knew who he was about, so even though he would get caught up in doing miracles and exorcisms, and there's people pulling on him to do that, he never let that distract him from his fundamental mission, which was to redeem us on the cross. That's why he would stop doing working miracles in the middle of a miracle session. And he'd say, to other towns I have to go. See ya. And they'd be like, what? Because that wasn't his purpose for coming, was to be a miracle worker. And if Jesus wasn't focused on who he was and what he was about, he could easily be distracted by the strong voices around him. If you don't know who you are and what you're about, in other words, if there's not a goal you're working towards, then who's directing your direction? The loudest voice, whoever can put the brightest light, we will steer towards that. But if I know that this is what I'm about, this tempting thing over here may come up, but if I know that that's not who I am and what I'm about, I won't turn that way and get distracted and go off my course. So I just invite you all to spend some time just thinking about that for yourselves. And I think as we grow, we're always having to rethink that question. Who am I and what am I about? Who am I and what am I about? Where does my identity come from? Is my identity from my major? Is my identity from my career choice? Is my identity in my relationships? Is my identity in my orientation? Is my identity in the amount of money I have? Is my identity in the possessions that I have? What is my identity fundamentally? Or is it above and outside all of those things? It's just a good question, isn't it? Jesus' identity was rooted in something very deep. He was the eternal Son of God, the Messiah of the world. Period. Everything he did was about that. Who are you? And so the question Jesus asks, who do people say that I am? And so I ask you, who are you? Spend some time with that this week. It's an important, very important question to answer and to keep answering your life long. God bless you.